Welcome to More Than Maple, a show about food and culture across Canada. I'm your host, Capri Cafaro, and this show comes to you from Bountiful Media and Harrowsmith Magazine. Today's episode is one of serendipity for me because I reached out to our guest today after I saw a little bit about her on an Air Canada flight from Edmonton to Toronto just a few short weeks back. So it is a pleasure to welcome Veronique Rivest. She is a world-renowned sommelier and the sommelier for Air Canada, which is why I saw her. And she is also the owner of the Soif Wine Bar in Gatineau. Soif, of course, meaning thirst in French. So, Veronique, it's a pleasure to have you.
Hi, Capri. Thanks for having me.
Oh, this is just exciting. As I was just floored that you got back to me after I saw this little blurb on the Air Canada flight, and I was like, I Googled you, I found your website, and you actually got back to me. So, I feel like I got a celebrity for sure today on the show.
It's fun. I hear from people flying with Air Canada almost weekly, right? Commenting about
I
the
bet.
wines and yeah.
I bet. Well, you have such a storied career. Air Canada just seems like such a no-brainer for where your career ended up. But when having an opportunity to speak with you a few weeks back offline, I was just enamored by learning about your journey into the world of becoming a sommelier. So, but I guess let me just even back up further. For folks that may not know what a sommelier does, let's start there. What is a sommelier and what is that job?
Good point. I mean, it's not that long ago that not a lot of people knew what a sommelier was, right? I didn't know, growing up as a kid, as a teenager. So sommelier is basically wine specialized server. And I present it like that. I insist on the service part because it is a service position. Sommelier works in restaurants and hotels where wine is served.
And
Because
apparently airlines.
yeah, also, right? You serve wine on a plane, so there you go. Anywhere wine is served could be on a cruise ship, could be. So the sommelier will again a service job will purchase wine for an establishment, build a wine program, train staff, serve customers, and so on.
Hmm.
Again, I insist on the service part because today a lot of people will follow a wine class or and call themselves a sommelier. The service
Yeah.
part is a huge aspect of what we do.
Oh, I can imagine because if you're someone like me and is uh, not particularly familiar with the nuances of wine, but want to learn more and want to enjoy that glass with dinner or at a tasting, having that interaction and that knowledge base to be able to share as part of your service, it has to be a critical component of the job.
Completely. And my big fight during my whole career has always been to try and make wine as approachable as possible. I think
Hmm.
it's a fascinating subject, right? It's hugely complex. There's so much history, and it's so much more than just a beverage, right? There's culture and geography and traditions involved. So super complex.
Yes.
But you don't need a PhD to enjoy a glass of wine, right? Or even to comment about it or say how you like, why you like it or you don't. So that's always been, there's always been, right? It's something that has hurt our industry, I think, for many years, the arrogance and the snobbery around wine, right?
Hmm.
So yes, it is a super complex subject, but making it approachable and fun for everyone, right? It's just wine. We're not selling lives.
Well, you may be. I mean, and I know that there have been countless valuable conversations over a glass of wine for sure. And I can already tell. I mean, the fact that you are so approachable, I'm sure helps the process of making that wine approachable to those that you work with, that you train, and that you serve. You had said earlier that you don't need a PhD to enjoy a glass of wine, but you do need some expertise and training. And I know that you have done that sort of thing in your journey to becoming again a world-renowned, award-winning sommelier. How did you get your start in getting into this industry?
It's very much, I think, a lot of my career has been driven by curiosity and gourmandise. I don't know how you say that in English. I like to eat and drink, right?
Right.
Gourmand.
Yes, of course. Yes.
So the curiosity, because it's such a fascinating, complex subject, I love studying.
Yes.
And so I've always, I still today, I'm studying every day, right? Learning every day about wine because
Absolutely.
it's evolving constantly.
Sure.
So very early on, I started when I was kind of imagining a career. I was working in restaurants already and just loved the restaurant industry. And when I was thinking of specializing in wine, I heard about these sommelier competitions, and I thought, okay, that'll be a good way to figure out, who's who does what, kind of build a network, and
Yeah.
I got the bug. I did my first sommelier competition in '96, clueless about
Okay.
what
So
it was.
30 years ago.
Yeah, yeah, long time ago, and then my whole competition career spanned over maybe 15, 20 years. About 6 or 7 of them at the international level. So I came Best Sommelier of Quebec, then Best Sommelier of Canada, Best Sommelier of the Americas, and then I had the opportunity to compete at the world level, which is a bit like our Olympics, right? It's only every 3
Right.
years, and only the best sommelier of each country can participate. And my first one was in 2007. And I did pretty well. And I just, again, the learning process, the preparation to the competition,
Yeah.
always learning, the exchange. I developed this incredible network of, colleagues, sommeliers, like-minded
I'm
individuals
sure.
all over the world. So I did the world competition 3 times and finally made the podium in 2013. I was the first woman ever on the podium with a second place in 2013.
Well, and I wanted to ask about that because and I'm thinking back 30 years ago, even again 15 years ago, and can imagine that when we think about this concept of a sommelier, even if we don't know exactly what they do, we have this maybe vision of a maitre d type person in a suit or tuxedo that is very erudite and proper, and usually male, right? This is in this vision of a sommelier or a maitre d type of person. It's a male, and so at least stereotypically. So I'm thinking to myself, you really had to be breaking glass ceilings 30 years ago, showing up at these sommelier competitions, and then starting to rack up awards in the process.
The first world competition I did out of 60 candidates, so 60 different countries, there were 7 women, and I think that's the biggest female representation I've ever seen. It's unfortunately gone. It varies between 4 and 6 or 7 female candidates out of about 70 candidates today. And it took, right, 2013, I made second place. That was the first time a woman was on the podium. The competition exists since 1969. So
Wow.
it took a lot of time. We are definitely going to see a woman take the first place, one time soon. I'm even thinking we'll probably see 3 women on the podium. But even though there's a small proportion of women in the big picture, in the there, from let's say 7 women out of 60 candidates, 5 of those women made it to the quarterfinal where there's only 12 candidates.
Right,
So
right.
the few
So,
women that
so
are
the proportion,
yeah,
right,
exactly.
goes up.
It shows the determination, right? We know it's not an
Yep.
easy industry to work in for women who want to have children, family.
Yep.
I mean, I did all this with my husband by my side and raising our 2 kids, so it's possible, right? It just
Yep.
yeah.
Everybody has to forge their own path, and certainly women, no matter the industry, it's the tale as old as time. At least in the 20th and 21st century, trying to balance all of it in the best way that we can. But how was it for you to be part of such a small group of women in an industry like this at such a high level of competition?
Incredibly inspiring, right? Because we support each other, we work together. I had the chance to train and work with amazing women from all over the world. We'd spend time together. They'd come and visit me, and we'd train together for a few days, or I'd go to see them. So it's developed this really great connections. And
Yeah.
we're all, I'd say every woman I know that's at a certain level in their career are all incredible mentors, coaches.
Yeah.
We spend a lot of time trying to drag other women in, right? And
I feel you.
raise them up with us. So and it's working. It's slow. It takes time, but they have a much greater presence today than ever before.
That's right. And certainly because of women like you and your colleagues that, as you said, are, trying to mentor and bring the next generations of women along with you. Now you just mentioned, well, maybe we train together and prep together. And I'm thinking to myself, this is a big thing that I need to ask about, which is what does it take to train to be in one of these competitions, right? I mean, I'm like, how much wine are you drinking at that point? And what goes into
I was
this?
going to say, we're not just sitting around drinking. That is the perception of just like for a lot of people, sommelier competitions, they imagine it's just a tasting competition, right? And I
Right.
think that's just it impresses people because, to see somebody smell and taste a wine and then say exactly what it is. That's a very small part of what a competition is, and identifying the wine exactly is a small part of the points. It's the whole
Mhm.
analysis, your whole tasting, like analyze, analyzing how, what are the aromas, the flavors, what's the acidity, the alcohol, the tannins, has it seen new oak, was it in stainless steel, right? These are all things we
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
deduct from tasting. And so
Yeah.
tasting is one part. All competitions are threefold. There's a tasting, there's service, right? I insisted on service in the
Hmm.
beginning. We are servers who are specialized in wine. So all of the service protocols, right? That's where diplomacy, psychology comes
Yeah.
into play. We
Absolutely.
we have a lot of hats, right? Working in service. So how do you serve a huge bottle of champagne to 40 people? How do you open and serve a 40-year-old Bordeaux or port, things like that?
Right.
Dealing with
Very good
difficult
point.
customers, making wine and food matches. And then the third part is theory, and that's probably the most important. We have big exams, long exams that touch upon everything dealing with beverage, alcohol, and food throughout the world. So knowing every single
Well,
grape variety, every single wine appellation, every single wine region, their food, everything about winemaking, which is
yeah,
basically chemistry, grape growing, which
absolutely.
is agriculture, right? So and it's not just wine, it's food,
You
it's
sure you don't, you sure you don't need a PhD? Because it sounds like,
yes, I consider I did at least equivalent to the PhD, if not two, in terms of the science. But what I mean is that that's our what we specialize. But for
right.
for the ordinary consumer who wants to have a glass of wine, we have been very intimidating, I find, as an
Yeah.
industry. We've
Yeah.
been arrogant and we've been pushing people away from wine, right? By making it
Hmm.
sound so complicated. So yes,
Yeah.
it's complex, and you can spend years and years in a lifetime studying it, and you'll never know everything. But communicating it to people, serving it to people, getting a lot of people to enjoy wine and
Yeah.
that.
How do you communicate that? I mean, how do you make something that is so complex that has all of these different nuances, dealing not just with the complexity of the flavors and the tastes, but that history, that pairing with food, all how do you make it less scary for someone to, look at? I mean, and particularly when you go to places, I find this with a wine list and a wine selection that is like an encyclopedia, right? That is this big, and you don't know where to start, and it's broken down by region, and you have no idea. You just get overwhelmed, and you just say, "What's the house wine?"
Exactly. And I always say if somebody does that, looks at the wine list, closes it, and asks for the house wine, the sommelier's done a bad job, right? Because the wine list is
Yeah.
not inviting. It's scary. So there's ways you can present a wine list to make it less intimidating, but then to consumers, ask the staff, right? If there's a sommelier there, and sometimes people think, oh no, I'm not going to talk to the sommelier, they're just going to make me spend more money. Um,
Hmm.
it's very often the opposite that happens if it's a good song. right? You
Right.
can talk openly with them. And if they're good, they'll understand right away what your level of understanding are, where you're at, and what you want.
Yeah.
And they will
Fair.
deliver that, right? This should be about pleasure. I'm not going to
Yeah.
tell you about soil pH or malolactic fermentation when I'm trying to sell you a wine in the restaurant. I'm going to tell
Right.
you, right, what it reminds me like, or if it's like it's going like being on a trip to Greece, or, talk about emotions, about feelings, about experiences, about
Yeah.
memories, right? Things that talk to
Yes.
people.
Right, right. And that's what, again, really enjoying food is all about, right? And having these experiences is connecting with those taste memories, being evocative of things that, bring joy. And that is definitely part of it. So this makes me definitely want to visit your location, Soif. You must be bringing these kind of values to your own business and Gatineau.
Entirely. I was talking to someone recently about, service attitudes and all that. And I said, eye rolling is strictly forbidden at SWEF, right? Certain places you feel like, whatever. The example I gave is like, if somebody wants ice to put in their glass of wine, we will bring it,
Right.
and with a smile. Right? That's what I mean by
Right.
eyes rolling.
Totally.
If somebody comes in and says, oh, I like, I don't know, some kind of critter label, or a very industrial wine that might
Right.
have residual, whatever, we won't roll our eyes. We'll say, okay, you like that? Come on in. Let me take you somewhere else, right? But we'll take them there slowly. We won't go from
Right.
an industrial critter label to a super funky natural wine, right? There's a way
Right.
of
Right.
so yes, it's Soif is always it's in our DNA. Simplicity. I'm a big fan of simplicity. Again, not to dumb
Amen.
things down. And it's not
Well,
always easy to do simple.
simplicity does not mean dumb down.
Exactly.
I think it means getting boiled down to the best, of in something.
And with a notion of authenticity too, right? Like
Yes,
no
yes,
BS.
simplicity and authenticity. Yes, absolutely. No question. How long have you had Soif?
We opened in September 2014, so yeah, a little over closing into 12 years.
Oh wow,
Yeah.
so I was just recently in Ottawa, so close to Gatineau. The next time I get out there in a few months, I'm definitely going to have to swing by and check things out at Soif.
And
Before, oh, go
sorry
ahead.
if I may, it's not just a wine bar, right? Because a lot of people think that. It's very much inspired by European wine bars where we do have a food offer. And when we first opened, we were named among the 10 best new restaurants in Canada. So,
Oh my goodness,
good food too.
congratulations. Well, that's very important. Again, food and wine go hand in hand, which brings me to my last topic, which is what brought me to you, which is Air Canada and being a sommelier for an airline, which again, when we spoke initially offline, you brought up some things that did not occur to me that needed to be taken into consideration when you're curating a wine list for an airline and for airline passengers. Please share that with our listeners and viewers.
Well, there's a few things. First, there's the physical conditions, right, of tasting at that altitude.
Right.
There's a big difference, between airplane cabins today and even 30 years ago, or definitely 50 years ago, right? In terms of what used to affect because you tasted differently in an
Yeah.
airplane at that altitude. A lot of question of humidity and dryness in the cabin, how it affects, your nasal passages, the noise also, right? There's this constant.
Yeah.
We should never forget we're multisensorial beings, right? Things we
Right.
hear will affect how we smell or taste, and vice versa. But cabins are much better now. And the first thing I did when I started working with them, I asked if there was a simulation cabin on the ground that I could use. And so we did the first tasting. I selected the wines, and the next time I took the plane, I asked to taste all of them. And I had taken
How cool.
extensive notes on the ground and then tasted them in the air to see the difference, right? And it's
Right.
not as big as it used to be. There are certain things, right? So we avoid very high alcohol ones, right? Just because there's also
Right.
the factor of being tired, and alcohol does drag
Sure.
you down.
Yep.
We avoid wines.
Dehydration.
Exactly. Right?
Yeah.
So too tannic, wines that are very, very tannic, those raspy reds, tannin also dehydrates, right? So,
Yeah.
and alcohol does, so lower alcohol levels. Wines that have a bit more fruit expression, right? Because that's usually a bit tamed down in
Right.
airplane cabins. So there's these factors, and then there's just purely logistical quantity. We go through
Yep.
a lot of wine, right? So
And
we
Air
have
Canada is not a small airline, and you go long distances to a variety of destinations.
exactly. The nice thing is that I can source from anywhere in the world because Air Canada will just go pick it up if it's in Australia or South Africa or British Columbia.
Oh,
right?
good point. Yeah.
So that's very nice. I'm not restricted to buying from one province, which is the case with the restaurant in Canada, right? You have to buy from
Sure.
your own liquor monopoly.
Yes.
But so really, really fun. And even though it's a relatively small wine list, I put a big focus on discovery, just like we do at Soif. And have a mix of classics, like there might be a Bordeaux or something from Napa, something better known. But, I've introduced Austrian Gruner Veltliner, German Pinot Noir,
Oh,
Greek
wow.
Zino Mavro, and people are really open to that. So that's fun.
Yeah. And does it rotate with season or,
Yes,
how?
we change the wine list there's 4 wine lists in a year, so every 3 months.
Okay. Well, and I love this idea of discovery, particularly on an airline. You get on an airplane oftentimes to go and discover a new place, and why not discover a new wine in the process? Veronique, this has just been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for taking out so much of your time in your busy schedule to join us here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's a great pleasure.
More Than Maple is a production of Bountiful Media North America for Harrow-Smith Magazine. It's researched, written, and hosted by me, Capri Cafaro. Recorded at That Toronto Podcast Studio in Toronto, Ontario, with technical support and post-production by 115 Creative.